Hey Laura, how are you?
Hello, Stephanie. It's good to see you again.
Thank you for coming on. I've been looking forward to this, and you were one of the tippity top on my list when I thought, okay, now I need to start, or I want to start having guests on the podcast and people who are talking about stuff that is just going to support parents in their journey, understanding their kids, sometimes big emotions, sometimes challenging behaviors, and just make things a little bit more easy, a little bit more smooth. And so I was like, Laura in capital.
I am honored. The last conversation we had was amazing, and I remember leaving it saying we could talk for so much longer. So I'm honored to be here.
Okay, so for those of the parents or educators who maybe are listening and haven't come across your work yet, maybe let us know a little bit about who you are, a bit about the OT Butterfly, because I know you're the founder of the OT Butterfly. I was just saying offline, I love seeing your posts and your reels and your stories and stuff on Instagram. They're just, oh my God, I just stand there and like nodding at my screen.
That's
So
the best. Oh, thank you.
um,
Yeah.
I
Okay. So
yeah, go.
yeah. So I am a pediatric occupational therapist by training. So I worked in the clinic for many years. I was in the private setting working with kids ages 2 to 10 with a range of different sensory needs, learning needs, communication styles, focusing mostly on sensory processing and how I could use that to help them better participate at school and at home and in the community, which is really the sauce of what OT is. And then I transitioned away from the clinic to start doing this business full time online. So I still use my OT lens in my practice, but I focus more on coaching parents rather than working with kids now. And so the OT Butterfly is all about spreading awareness and education about how all of the behaviors are a reflection of the nervous system and how our nervous system state and how our sensory processing abilities and challenges can have a direct impact on behavior and learning. So, I want to help more people understand that piece of neurodiversity and just be more neurodiverse affirming in the world in general. And so, I do all of that through Instagram, through my own podcast, through courses, coaching, I'm trying to be everywhere and just spread the word.
I totally get that. What's your Instagram called? Even though we've mentioned it, but for people who are like, "Oh, where do I follow her?"
Yes. So everything is the OT Butterfly. So THEOT, like occupational therapy, and then butterfly, all one word. That's my Instagram, my website, and you should be able to find me.
Yeah, beautiful. So we'll put all the links and everything in the show notes after, so you guys can find Laura, find out more about her work, and follow her. So tell me about. I know. So if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see that Laura has a book in the background. Obviously, if you're listening on the podcast, you can't. But tell us a bit about your book, because I know, again, offline, you had mentioned you've been doing book reads at school. So tell us all about that.
Yeah, so I published my book with a wonderful company called A Kids Co. And so they have a huge line of books that basically start the conversation with kids about like really hard topics, but like very necessary topics. And so I asked them if neurodiversity could be one of those topics. So my book is called A Kid's Book About Neurodiversity. And it's very simple and it doesn't water down the topic of neurodiversity, but it does it in such a way that it makes it easy for kids to understand. If anyone listening has ever read or heard of something called like a social story, which are often ways to help kids understand new concepts, how to understand certain challenges coming up, how to prepare for things. It reads very much like a social story where it's talking to the person, the audience that you're reading to, and there's really no main character. It's not your typical children's book. It's very information based. But I've been very humbled, and it's been very rewarding to see kids, their faces when I read the book, and also hear from parents who have read it to their kids, all of the light bulbs they're having and saying, I feel that way sometimes, or I know someone who does that with their hands, or I know someone who wears headphones. Um, and it's called A Kid's Book About Neurodiversity. And yes, I want neurodivergent kids to hear it, but I really honestly created it for neurotypical kids to hear because I really wanted to take the burden off of neurodivergent kids and their families who we always have to explain our behaviors and our quirks and why we don't do this or why we always do that. And it would just be so much more, it would just be a more inclusive world if people just knew that there were different ways to behave and communicate and experience life. So there you
Mm.
go.
Ah, beautiful. So is that available everywhere, like Amazon? Can people get it across like over here in Australia?
I don't know what the status is of it today. I believe I've seen it on Amazon UK. I don't know that I've seen it on Amazon Australia or the other affiliates of Amazon. But if you go straight to a Kids Co website and you search the book there, they should have some links on different avenues that you can find it.
Okay, awesome. I will be looking that one up. I can't believe I don't have a copy yet, but I've like just Googled it and I found it on Amazon.
They're slowly rolling it out to different companies, and like I think the path is that they do want it to be available more globally, but they test it in different kinds of areas at different times. So
Yeah.
hopefully.
Okay, well, for everyone, so my podcast is global as all are, but for those of you who are in Australia, yes, I just found it on Amazon Australia. So yeah.
Oh, yay.
So,
Cool.
yeah. So that's exciting. So I remember seeing, before we jump into what we're going to talk about, neurodiversity and the nervous system budget, and understanding our kids' behavior. I remember seeing, I think, when was it? You went to Disneyland, I think, with your family, was it?
Oh, I go all the time. I go like 3 times a month. But yes, you probably saw a video of me there.
So how does your family go? Because I've never been, but I think it would be such an overload. Like, it's exciting. There's noises, there's lights, there's rides, there's like, that sounds overwhelming.
It is extremely overwhelming. And someone recently reached out and said that they had just gone recently as an adult for the first time. And they're like, I don't, like, I love Disney, but like, isn't this too overwhelming for you? I don't find it enjoyable. And I said, I think it's because I grew up going as a child. So it has a little bit of nostalgia for me that I can override, I guess, the overstimulation. And I have perfected, how my body works, how my daughter's body works, and knowing the park very well, that I know where to take breaks, when to take breaks. I know places to avoid crowds. I know the best places to have a meltdown. I know like the cadence and pace of my daughter. So it's been a benefit that we have a pass, so we can also go in shorter increments of the day. And it just helps overall, just being so familiar with it, but there's no way around it. It's quite overstimulating. And so I don't recommend just showing up. You definitely should go with a plan.
Okay.
Definitely go with the plan.
I love that you just mentioned really a few strategies off the cuff just there about supporting your kids in maybe, overloading kind of situations and environments. So, and I often just think, obviously, 100 times more about the nervous system and sensory sensitivities and sensory processing than I do. But I feel like I know a little bit that helps me to go, oh my God, no wonder why my child is doing this, or why I'm feeling that. So
Right.
so I wish, maybe you wish as well, that we got taught this stuff at school about our bodies and about the nervous system. Like, I didn't even learn this in really my 4-year university degree. It was a health science degree, speech pathology. And
Yeah.
I was like, why can't I get this child to sit and do the activities? It's a half-hour session. Like, mind blowing when I realized.
Yeah. They focus mostly on just a lot of like the top level skills and behaviors and just skip over this really important part that really directly impacts their access to those skills. It's like, yeah, doesn't make any sense.
So where do we start with if we want to explain to parents and help them understand a little bit about the nervous system? And I know you talk about a nervous system budget. What's really helpful for parents to know?
Yeah. Okay. So let's start at the beginning. So, kind of what you were saying is that and as I mentioned earlier, all behaviors stem from the state of our nervous system. So, what parents just need to know, the simplicity of it is that we have two main states, responses of our nervous system. We have the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight. I think sympathetic means S. So at sympathetics and stress, that's the fight or flight one. This is the part of the nervous system that puts our body into action. Sometimes we need it for good things, like if our child's about to fall, it can allow us to like have a quick response and pay attention to that. our body also can go into fight or flight when we perceive any kind of threat or danger. Someone chasing us, we would run away. Something's hot, we pull our hand back. We definitely need that part of our nervous system on and active at certain times of the day. The other part of our nervous system that balances it out is called the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's P. And I think of P as like pause. It pauses the sympathetic nervous system. And it's the opposite. If the sympathetic nervous system, the stressed one, is fight or flight, parasympathetic, which pauses that, is rest and digest. So that's really your calm state. We certainly don't want to 100% live in our parasympathetic state. We wouldn't get anything done. We wouldn't be able to protect ourselves. We definitely need a balance, and we definitely need them on at whatever is going on part of our day. With neurodivergent individuals, they tend to sort of live more in the sympathetic nervous system state, where their nervous system turns that state on, the stress state on, easier. And it stays on longer, and it takes them quite a bit more effort to get that parasympathetic nervous system online to kind of pause those big reactions. So this is why it can be really hard for kids to like just calm down when they're really, really melting down or reacting to something that happened. We may not be able to see or believe or understand why they really have a big reaction, why they're in fight or flight, but they are. And so that's the first thing that I think parents need to understand, is that is an involuntary reaction of their nervous system. And the thing that triggers that could be anything from a sensory trigger, if they're sensitive to sound, to an emotional trigger, which makes them have certain internal sensations. So there's lots of different things that can trigger that. The next piece that parents need to understand is that when your child's nervous system is in the sympathetic state, stress state, fight or flight state, that lives kind of in the lower part of their brain. And so since this is the survival mode, the brain reroutes a lot of its resources to that part of the brain, which means it takes away resources from the top part of the brain. And what lives in the top part of the brain? That's impulse control, that's emotional regulation, that's communication, that's being able to plan and problem solve and be flexible with things. All of the things we would love our kids to be able to have at any given moment in time, right? But so when they are in the stress, dysregulated fight or flight state, they have less access to that part of the brain. It's kind of rerouted its resources, okay? Well, I'll pause there before I move on to the second bit. Is there anything you want me to clarify or anything you want to add on to it before I keep on blabbing?
Oh, I'm like, if you could see me, everyone, I'm nodding, nodding, nodding. It makes so much sense why when our child is upset or, agitated or irritated or full-blown melting down, they don't have access to that language and that comprehension and the problem solving, all those things that you said. And we get so frustrated because we're like, use your words, or how did you not see that happen? The same thing happened yesterday and you did it again. No wonder, you're in trouble. For example, are we asking too much of our kids and their brain in those moments?
Yeah, absolutely. When we are looking at a kid melting down over, the banana that you peeled and they wanted to peel it themselves, and we're like, just get over it. Can you just, I don't even know why you're freaking out right now. Just tell me what you want. Do you want this banana or do you want that banana? Why can't you say? We are asking quite a bit of our kids at the moment, even if they are the most verbal, if they like to talk a lot and they're really intelligent and they are capable of using words. In that moment, a lot of specifically neurodivergent individuals, their brain is kind of, it's saying like, that part of my brain is not really necessary. I need to keep this body alive. So it's kind of rerouting those resources. And so that's a really important part for parents to understand. Then the second piece to this is then how parents can help our kids keep and maintain access to that top part of their brain as much as possible. Because if we think about a typical kid's day, right? If we'll just think about a kid's day, whether they're in preschool or daycare or regular elementary school, there are a lot of demands placed on their nervous system. When I think of demands, I think of them having to tolerate sounds, them having to tolerate transitions, them having to share space with people and classmates, them having to put on that scratchy suit that they have to wear for some uniform, right? All of these things are demands placed onto their body, and they may not react to each of them individually, but over time within the day, it can accumulate. Yeah, it stacks on top of each other. So I liked to help parents understand this concept by thinking about the nervous system budget. So if we think about our nervous system capacity to handle stress and demands, think of that like our budget, how much cash flow we have. And it's not an infinite amount. It is finite, and we can definitely run out of resources and go into what I call nervous system debt. So to make it really simple, I just picked a number. This is, anyone who's listening, this is very similar to Spoon's theory, which is a very familiar theory in the disability community, like physical disability and chronic pain disabilities. But it's based on nervous system. So I just picked like a random number, like $30. Let's say we all have $30 in our nervous system. We could all have the same amount of money for our nervous system budget to spend at the beginning of each day. But for different people, different tasks and demands may cost their nervous system, may have a different price on their nervous system. So for me, if I were traveling that day, like going on a plane and a flight, that would cost my nervous system probably like $15, $20. That'd be a very expensive thing for my nervous system. For my husband, that would probably cost his nervous system maybe $5. Like no problem. But back to our example for a typical day. So for kids, let's say you wake them up, you open the curtains, the sunlight comes in their room. That takes, maybe that costs the nervous system $1. Then you ask them to change. It's a snow day. They've got to wear socks. They've got to wear their long pants. They've got to wear their snow pants. They've got to wear their jacket. And if you have a kid who's sensitive to the feel of those fabrics and all of that on their skin, that might be an expensive task for them. That might be like $5, $10. We haven't even gone downstairs for breakfast yet, right? Then we ask them to go downstairs for breakfast, and dad turns on the blender, and siblings are arguing over who gets the blue cup. I want the red cup. You got the blue cup. There's a lot of stuff going on. All of those things are deducting from your nervous system budget. And by the time they get to school, they're left with almost nothing in their nervous system's account. And this is really symbolizing the idea that if we can look at their morning routines, if earlier in the day we can save their nervous system cash, we can discount some of the things by maybe, I see they're having a hard time at the kitchen table. Can I let them go eat their cereal on the couch this one time, or every school day, because it's easier? Can I put the socks on for my child because I already know dressing is difficult for them? Yes, he is able to do it. He's 8 years old, but I can see that all of these things are stacking up. What can I take away from their nervous system? What can I discount on the price of their nervous system tasks, right? So how can I keep adding to their account? And then we want to basically see by the end of the day, when they get home from school, that they have some cash still in their nervous system to be able to transition back home, to do homework, to do after school chores, to sit at the dinner table, to get undressed for bath time, all of the things. There's just a lot of demands on a kid's day that I think we often don't think about as demands as parents. And we often think that they should just do it because they can. But I want to remind parents that if we want our kids to be successful or notice, more regulated behavior, we have to accommodate at certain times of the day when we can. And the last bit I'll add to this analogy is, just like you can have kind of transactions that takes away cash from your nervous system, I want you to think that there are also ways to make deposits into their nervous system by maybe doing some deep breathing in the car at every red light before we go to school. If we take some deep breaths or if we do some like hopping while we get out of the car and we hop like a bunny to the line for class, maybe you're adding some little deposits back into their nervous system by using some sensory strategies, which is helping their parasympathetic nervous system come back online. So we're constantly dancing around that and trying to keep them in balance, but trying to do it proactively. Because once you are in nervous system debt, when you have nothing left in your bank account, maybe you're withdrawn over from the amount that you have, you might notice chronic dysregulation, a lot of irritability, moodiness, just uncooperative with anything you ask, and it could last for a long time. And it's really, really hard to pull them out of that dysregulation. So I always try to help parents be more proactive about it.
Oh,
That was a lot of
so many,
talking.
yeah, so many things that that make so much sense. I wanted to pick on a couple of things. Um, the concept of accommodating, not coddling. For my
Mm,
kids, I have two kids, they're neurotypical kids. And this morning was a brilliant example. We're recording this at 9:25. They just left half an hour ago, like 5 minutes ago, my husband took them. And I was getting their socks and I put both of them, I packed most of both of their lunches because they had a late night. I just flew in yesterday from California, actually. And
sweet.
and I was like, oh, the kids, they wanted to see me. We stayed up a bit too late and then they couldn't go to sleep. So yeah, this morning I was like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to accommodate. I would do the same for my husband if he woke up late and was tired or,
Yeah.
couldn't kind of pull it together. I wouldn't be like, hey, you're big enough to know how to do this on your own. You can do your socks, your shoes, your bag. I've seen you do it all a million times before. So no, you're just trying to manipulate me. Get it done yourself.
Yep, exactly. This really resonates a lot for families who have kids with the PDA profile or the pathological demand avoidance profile, for parents who have to do low demand parenting and do a lot of things for their kids. And that is really, really going to benefit from as many accommodations so that their nervous system is not triggered, because they are really going around with a dysregulated nervous system. So yeah, but this can apply to neurotypical kids too. Everybody gets dysregulated after so many different things. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually really helped me. I've talked to my husband about the spoons theory when I only discovered it I feel like it was a couple of years ago. And I was like, oh, this is
Yes.
groundbreaking. Like if
Yeah.
anyone wants to look at, I mean, you explained it beautifully in like 3 minutes. But the
Was that
spoon
three?
theory.
Okay, good. Because I was like, I'm talking a lot.
But
Yeah.
it makes so much sense, and it actually breeds a lot of empathy for me, for my husband, or my kids, because I know that I need this stuff sometimes too, and I'm not putting it on. I'm not trying to be manipulative. I'm not being lazy. Some days I just cannot. I don't have enough energy, or all these things in, like, when it's a day when everything that could go wrong did go wrong. That's
Yeah.
not me choosing to be lazy and, get my family to help me. I'm like, no, I actually need this
Yeah.
sometimes.
And the spoons theory is great. And it gives you another example of how much we are willing to accommodate for more of the physical disability community. The pain, well, chronic pain, it's not as obvious to the onlooker, but people tend to be more okay with accommodating those kinds of disabilities rather than neurodivergent or different brain wiring, because it's another invisible thing that they can't see. Um, and so I think that giving kids this language or parents this language to understand it is really, really helpful.
Yeah. So do you have any tips or suggestions for parents who this makes sense and they want to, I don't want to say implement it, but, keep it in their mind and kind of work with their kids from this space?
Yeah.
Um, what are some things that maybe they need to know in terms of helping, accommodating for some sensory processing differences?
Mhm.
How do we kind of begin to, because this could be brand new for a lot of people who are listening
Yeah.
to the podcast and have no idea and what we're talking about. And so where would they start? I guess I'm saying.
Yeah. So I usually tell parents to make a list of the things in your child's life that seem hardest for them. So just start there. List, is it, being with friends? Is it sharing space? Is it playing independently? Is it putting on clothes? Is it eating? Is it mealtime? Just listing everything out that you think in your child's day are some of the hardest things that will likely cause behaviors or meltdowns that are hard for you to support. And then as best you can, try to kind of categorize them in terms of well, in terms of like sensory things, if you can, right? So if it's like clothes and they're saying this fabric is too itchy, I would say maybe that's a sensory component, right? I'm gonna give parents a big hint here though. A lot of things that kids are fearful of, avoidant of, or dislike, a lot of them can be linked to sensory, even like the emotional ones are like they just don't like when they're being told no, or they just don't like when their sibling is in the same space as them. Some kids can be sensitive to their internal sensations related to emotions, which is called interoception. It's one of our eighth senses, and that is also a sensory system. So bottom line is, I would make a list of the times of the day and things that are hardest for your child. If you can, try to pick out what you think is sensory. You would probably need the help of an OT. I have a lot of resources on my podcast and website. I have a free sensory profile. If anybody wants to download it, I'll give you the link for that so they can kind of see it all laid out. But once you lay out the times of their day and the things that are hardest for them, zoom in closer and say, what out of this task can I make easier for my child? What do I have control over? I can't physically make my child get out of the car and go to school, short of literally picking them up and dragging them, right? But up until then, can I just pack their backpack for them? Yeah, I can do that. Can I set it by the door for them? Yeah, I can do that. Can I unbuckle their seatbelt for them? Yeah, I can do that. Can I open the door for them? Yeah, I can do that. What can you do to make little tasks easier for your kids so that they only have to do the most important thing? Usually that goes down to, you can't make them go to the bathroom. You can't make them eat, chew, and swallow. You can't make them sleep. You can't make them like go attend something. So out of those main things, we want them to be regulated by the time they need to do those tasks. Back up, and what areas of those tasks can we do for them or help them do half of? And then the other piece is, if you know your child has sensory needs, they need a lot more of movement, like they seek out a lot of movement or chewing, or they are sensitive to a lot of input like bright lights or sounds or feelings, then you're going to also want to help use some body-based regulation strategies, again, with the support of an OT. I have a lot of resources to help you with that as well. Usually it's big things like mindfulness, deep breathing, and then what OTs call heavy work, which is a lot of deep input to your muscles and tendons and joints, which can be really regulating to a lot of nervous systems. And then there's a whole lot of different sensory strategies. I bet that a lot of you are already doing, or your kids are doing without you even noticing that they are sensory strategies. But the more you can build in time for those, make them more proactive rather than waiting for your child to seek them out, is going to pay off for you in the long run.
Okay, wow, you've just dropped a whole bunch of golden nuggets there. So I
Yay.
invite people to re-listen to this episode because there were so many ideas. I love you said do these things proactively. I love that you said make a list of what are the things that your child finds really challenging, or where you notice these, what we might call challenging behaviors,
Yep.
what comes up with those. And I love that you also have a free sensory profile on your website, so people can people fill that in for each of their kids and get some ideas around, oh, this is what kind of is hard for them, or this is their preferences, and this is what maybe we can get some insights on.
So yeah, so it's not quite like a something you fill out, but it is a list of common behaviors you might see for different kinds of sensory profiles, and then it gives you just a couple different ideas on how you could best support those kinds of profiles. And then once you have that in mind, you can do more of a narrowed search of things that you want support with. Again, my website has a good search bar for this. But one last tip I'll say about that is, don't be surprised if your child meets criteria for like different kinds of sensory profiles. So you could have one child who seeks and loves spinning and swinging, but they are very sensitive to like touch and clothing or getting their hands messy. So you could have, it could be like a mix, like a hodgepodge of lots of different kinds of sensory behaviors.
Okay. Wow. Fantastic. So we'll put, again, all those links in the show notes down below so you guys can find those afterwards. Oh, I feel like we could talk for double. We should make
So
this an
much.
hour. But this is how we do it. And I know that people are going to jump on your website. They're going to follow you on Instagram. Is there any last message that you think, if I could just get this across to parents and this could be absorbed and really stick with them, I would love them to know this? Is there something like that you want to share?
Yes. So here's what I want you to think about, parents, is that if you cannot accommodate the environment or the task, let me restate that. If you cannot adjust the environment or the task, you need to adjust your expectations. So if you cannot adjust anything in the environment, if you can't turn the lights down, if you can't change your child's overwhelming schedule, if you can't turn down the volume, if you can't change the clothes that they're wearing, if you can't do any of it, fine, because some things we can't, then you need to adjust your expectation. You cannot expect them to behave 100% A plus gold star through everything, especially when you're dealing with a neurodivergent child. Trying to exist that way in a neurotypical world really requires a lot of accommodations, just for a neurodivergent child to feel comfortable and safe, let alone participate and succeed and have conversations and listen and learn and all of the things we want them to do.
Fantastic. That was brilliant. I love that sum up. I think if you can't change some of the things that your child needs to do or that is happening today, can you at least change your expectations? Because we cannot, I mean, for me as an adult, and I cannot always, A plus,
100%. Yep.
it's hard. So thank you so much, Laura. I have absolutely loved it. I know everyone listening will have taken so much away, and I encourage you all, as I have said a couple of times, please go follow Laura. Her work is amazing and and hilarious and really funny, and just it hits home and you go, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense. So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me, Stephanie.
Thank you.